Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us across the fence. I'm Fran Stoddard. My guest today is well known to Vermonters. I'm honored that former Vermont Governor Madeleine Kunin is joining me today. Kunin began her political life as a mother of 4 young children. In 1984, after serving in the Vermont legislature and as a 2-term lieutenant governor, Kunin became Vermont's first woman governor. Following 3 terms in that office, she moved on to be U.S. Deputy Secretary of Education and then ambassador to Switzerland during the Clinton administration. A recipient of dozens of honorary degrees and other honors, Kunin has continued to work tirelessly for women in politics, the Democratic Party, and the spread of democracy globally. Thank you so much for coming in, and the environment and sustainability and many other issues. So let's talk about some of those. Education has certainly been dear to you as a mother, as a grandmother of 7 or
About
6 coming
severe.
on 7, a teacher, U.S. Deputy Secretary of Education, and during your governorship you began the difficult process of refinancing education. Schools are central to our communities, of course, and are also a subject of concern and controversy. How far have we come in the 40 years that you've been, or so years that you've been really looking at education and what's needed?
Well, some things are better and some things we still are trying to figure out. Now, we were trying to figure out really how children learn and what the impact of social media has on learning. And of course, that's been a big revolution. But I think on the whole, more children are getting a good education than 20, 30 years ago.
Right.
And we're also starting earlier with early education. And that's been proven to be a very good change, a very good innovation. So I put a lot of emphasis on education when I was governor, and then when I was at the U.S. Department of Education. Because, you know, when all is said and done, it's still the key. It's the key that opens up the world to children, to adults.
And consolidation, this is just something that has to happen right now, so it's okay, and hopefully we'll move through this trying time.
Well, you know, it's also controversial as people recognize that their small community school is the center of activity, in a way, the center of what's important, even in a small town. So consolidation has to happen, but not without some tears.
Yeah, absolutely. And even higher education is in trouble. A couple of colleges have closed. It's heartbreaking and worrisome and devastating to, again, communities that they are in. Is this also just an inevitable correction? Is there some reinvention you think we might need to do there? Any thoughts about higher education and how it affects our communities?
Well, what's happening is there are fewer students.
Yeah.
We see that in Vermont and we see it globally. But higher education, there's such an emphasis now on what they call the STEM subjects, the hard issues, the hard subjects, and parents want to make sure, after spending so much money, which many parents do, on higher education, that their children can get a job when it's all over. And so that makes it tough for small liberal arts colleges. And I still believe very strongly that a liberal arts education is a good education that prepares you for life and teaches you how to write and how to think, but it's not in vogue right now.
Right. Well, I'm also kind of back to the smaller schools, but also colleges. How can community members best get involved, or should they, to create improved education in their small town?
Well, parents' involvement is always important, and just, you know, the old-fashioned thing is volunteer, get to know your...
Be part of it.
Be part of it, exactly. Which is hard for people, too, today, because so many mothers are working and trying to juggle work and family and social obligations. But yeah, engagement in your education, local education, is important.
Well, it's interesting. I was just speaking to UVM Extension Director Chuck Ross, who told me about his concern about the women leadership gap in Vermont, particularly in state and local leadership positions. I wondered about your thoughts about, and I think it was about, women just aren't signing up because they're taking care of kids, they're taking care of parents, they've got a second job, they've all these things. What are your tricks to make it easier for women to get involved, as you've gotten so many women involved in politics and other leadership positions?
Well, there's no real trick to it. There's just trying to figure out where you can get help. I mean, those women who have family nearby, that makes it easier. They can babysit, they can invite you over for supper. Things like that, but it's difficult. But what we've done to increase the number of women in political leadership is started Emerge Vermont, where we train women in speaking skills and raising money and how to be a politician. So women still hesitate about politics because there's no degree in running for office. But the good news is more and more women are running for office.
Right.
And whether that will translate into local leadership, I don't know. But I know local leadership does translate into political leadership, because women have learned how to run things, how to organize, how to make an impact.
And they're really good at that. And Emerge Vermont, which was created by you, really can help women get there.
Yes, and we've had tremendous interest in it.
So you recently published your fourth book. It's beautiful, called Coming of Age, My Journey in the 80s. Delightful essays and poems. I'm wondering, because this is your fourth book, how has the publishing industry changed? How do you see, how are you getting this book out that might have been different from other books in the past?
Well, the publishing industry is in trouble, and fewer books are being read. But social media is having an impact on publishing as well. And with my first book, Living a Political Life, I think that was about 20 years ago, I got book reviews, in the New York Times and the Washington Post, and was very happy. Almost no book reviews now. They're on social media, or there are other interview programs. So you have to develop
podcasts.
And podcasts.
There's a podcast out there people can find when they look for your book.
That's right, and that's entirely new.
Yeah.
So it's different, but you have to figure out how to maneuver in this new world.
Right. Your most recent accolade is the annual Leadership Award from the Vermont Natural Resources Council. It's hardly surprising, since, among many other things, you created the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board, which conserves farms and natural areas, but also works to develop affordable housing. You champion smart growth and modernized land use planning. How is Vermont doing on the sustainability issues that are so dear to you?
Well, it's interesting when there is prosperity, when there is good economic news, there's more effort to purchase land, to develop. When things slow down in Vermont. I think we're doing quite well, because we have Act 250. Now, Act 250, which sets certain regulations about large-scale developments, has been attacked from the moment it was born. People say it's anti-business, but it's really kept Vermont, by and large, pretty intact. And every time they try to kill it, it springs up to life again.
Right, right. There are people who still come and go, oh my gosh, there are no billboards here. I'm moving here.
Right.
Or whatever it is. Or, people recycle here and they don't in other places. And it seems so natural for us to live this kind of life.
Yeah, it's part of our DNA to make changes or prevent changes that keep the essence of Vermont, which is the scenery, which are the farms, which are, of course, in trouble. But we make an effort just to keep our state beautiful and economically strong, too. I mean, so many people think you can't have both. You can't have economic growth and environmental protection. But that's a false assumption. Many jobs are created with environmental activity, and so the two really can work in tandem.
And they are happening. And your final thoughts on leading a positive, creative life well into the 80s and beyond?
Well, there's no magic. At least I haven't discovered it. I think if you keep on being active, which all the pundits tell you to do, and if you're so curious about life, and if you're curious about your own potential, and if you're engaged, you know, if you're with other people, or friendships are so important. So I think just not getting depressed about being older, and I say this as another birthday is coming up, I'm trying to tell myself, that's okay, you know? Even though I'm creeping up there, so is everybody else. So I think trying to enjoy your family, your good thoughts, let them, excuse me, let them blossom. So there's still a lot to
do, and yeah, and to celebrate. And we celebrate you. Thank you so much for coming in and joining us today, Governor Madeleine Kunin. It's always inspirational.
Well, it's my pleasure.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us across the fence. I'm Fran Stoddard.